There's something about night trains, something electric, something timeless. They cut through the darkness, whispering along the tracks, carrying stories and secrets. In that dim, swaying world, reality blurs and the ordinary rules of life fall away. It's a place between worlds, between destinations, where strangers can collide and moments can become memories that haunt you forever. I never planned for it to happen. I never imagined I would find myself tangled in glances and touches, in whispers and stolen breaths. But the night has a way of weaving magic, of drawing people together with invisible threads of longing and desire. And it happened more than once, each time unexpected, each time unforgettable. Encounter 1, the stranger with the dark eyes. It was late, well past midnight, the train nearly empty. I was lost in thought, my gaze fixed on the rain-smeared window, watching droplets race down the glass. The world outside was a blur of lights and shadows dancing across my reflection. I was alone, my guard down, and then I felt it. That prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the unmistakable awareness of being watched. I turned, my heart skipping a beat, and then I saw him. He was leaning casually against the doorway, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were fixed on me, dark and unblinking. There was something intense about his gaze, something that made my skin tingle, my pulse quicken. I should have looked away, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, held in place by his stare. He moved slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving mine as he walked towards me. I could feel my heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. He was beautiful. Tall, lean, with tousled dark hair and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. His lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile as he slid into the seat beside me, his knee brushing against my thigh. He was close, too close. His voice was low, smooth, dripping with confidence. "Is this seat taken?" I shook my head, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, please." We talked, our words flowing easily, but underneath it was a tension, electric, heavy. His eyes never left mine, his gaze intense, burning. I could feel his presence, his body heat wrapping around me, his leg pressing against mine, firm, steady. My skin tingled where we touched, my pulse racing, my breath catching. He leaned in, his lips just inches from mine, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't think you like being alone at all." His breath was warm, teasing, his words dripping with promise. My heart skipped a beat, my body arching towards him instinctively. I felt his fingers brush mine on the armrest, light as a whisper, and then the train slowed, the moment shattered. He stood, his eyes lingering on mine, dark and smoldering. "Maybe next time." He murmured, his voice rough, and then he was gone. I sat there, breathless, trembling, haunted by his touch, his gaze, his presence. He was gone, but the memory of him, that would stay with me forever. Encounter 2, the mysterious woman with red lips. I thought about him for weeks, replaying the moment over and over in my mind, haunted by the memory of his touch, his gaze, his voice. I couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation, of longing, of unfinished business. But then, something else happened. Something just as unexpected, just as intoxicating. It was another late-night train, another empty carriage, another rainy evening. But this time, it wasn't his eyes that found me. It was hers. I saw her as soon as I stepped on the train. Seated at the far end, her legs crossed elegantly, her head tilted down as she read a book. Her hair was dark, flowing over her shoulders in glossy waves, her lips painted a bold, vibrant red. There was something magnetic about her, something that drew my gaze, that made my pulse quicken. I tried to look away, tried to ignore the way my heart raced as I walked past her, but then she looked up, Her eyes were dark, deep, framed by long lashes that brushed against her cheekbones as she blinked. Our eyes met, and I felt a jolt shoot through me, my breath catching, my skin tingling. She held my gaze, her lips curving into a slow, sensual smile. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding, my fingers curling around the edge of my seat. She watched me, her eyes sweeping over me slowly, lingering on my face, my lips, my neck. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but I didn't look away. I held her gaze, letting her see the curiosity in my eyes, the intrigue, the desire. She closed her book, her fingers grazing the pages delicately. Her nails were painted the same shade of red as her lips, glossy and sharp. She leaned forward, her hair falling over her shoulder, her eyes locked on mine. "You're staring," she said, her voice low, smoky, laced with amusement. I felt my face heat up, embarrassment flooding through me. I opened my mouth to apologize, but she held up her hand, her fingers brushing my knee, her touch light, teasing. "I don't mind," she whispered, her lips curling into a playful smile. "In fact, I like it." Her fingers lingered on my knee, her touch warm, electric. My breath hitched, my pulse racing, my skin tingling. She leaned in, her face just inches from mine, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I like being watched, especially by someone like you." Her eyes darkened, her gaze dropping to my lips, her fingers sliding up my thigh, slow, deliberate. My heart stopped, my body arching towards her instinctively. Her breath was warm against my skin, her presence overwhelming, intoxicating. I felt her fingers tighten on my thigh, her grip firm, possessive. I shivered, my body reacting to her touch, my skin burning where she held me. And then the train slowed, the moment shattered, the spell broken. Her fingers slipped from my thigh, her body pulling back. She stood, her eyes lingering on mine, dark and smoldering. "Until next time," she murmured, her voice low, dripping with promise. And then she was gone. I sat there, breathless, trembling, haunted by her touch, her gaze, her presence. She was gone, but the memory of her, that would stay with me forever. I was haunted by her for weeks, the woman with the red lips and the bold, smoldering eyes. I could still feel the warmth of her touch on my thigh, the electric tension in her voice. The way she looked at me, as if she could see right through me, as if she knew all of my secrets. I replayed the encounter over and over in my mind, wondering who she was, where she was going, if I would ever see her again. I found myself taking more late-night train rides, my eyes scanning every carriage, searching for a glimpse of her. I tried to tell myself it was foolish, that she was just a stranger, just a fleeting moment. But she had left her mark on me, just like he did, the man with the dark eyes and the wicked smile. It was as if these trains held magic, as if they were enchanted, pulling me into a web of glances and touches, of whispers and unspoken promises. I thought about them both, the man and the woman, two strangers who came into my life without warning and disappeared just as suddenly, leaving behind nothing but memories that burned in my mind and tingled on my skin. I wondered if I would ever see them again. I wondered if there would be another encounter, another moment that would leave me breathless, trembling, wanting more. And then it happened again. Encounter 3, the mysterious couple. It was another rainy night, the sky pitch black, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. The train was quiet, almost eerily so, the rhythmic hum of the engine lulling me into a dreamlike state. I was alone in the carriage, my head resting against the window, my breath fogging up the glass. I watched the raindrops race each other to the bottom, my fingers tracing their paths absent-mindedly. I didn't hear them come in. I didn't notice them until they were standing right in front of me. A couple, a man and a woman, both dressed in black, both devastatingly beautiful. They stood close together, their bodies pressed against each other, their faces angled towards me. I blinked, startled, my heart skipping a beat. I opened my mouth to apologize, to excuse myself, to move away. But the woman smiled, her lips curving into a wicked, knowing grin. I felt my breath catch, my body tensing under her gaze. Her eyes were dark, shimmering with mischief, her hair falling over her shoulders in glossy waves. She was stunning, elegant, her figure wrapped in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. The man beside her was just as striking, tall, broad-shouldered, his jawline sharp, his eyes piercing. His hand rested on her waist, his fingers splayed possessively over her hip. The woman stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the floor, her eyes never leaving mine. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, her voice low, smoky, dripping with amusement. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I managed to shake my head, my voice trembling. "No, please." She slid into the seat beside me, her body angled towards mine, her thigh pressing against mine, firm, steady. I tensed, heat rushing to my face. She was so close, too close. I could feel her body heat, the scent of her perfume wrapping around me, intoxicating, dizzying. Her lips curled into a playful smile as she leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I saw you watching the rain. You look so lonely." My heart raced, my breath catching in my throat. I felt her fingers brush against mine, light as a whisper, teasing, lingering. Her eyes darkened, her gaze dropping to my lips. "You know, it's dangerous to be alone on a night like this," she murmured, her voice dripping with promise. The man moved then, stepping behind her, his body towering over us, his presence overwhelming. He was watching us, his eyes intense, burning with something dark, something hungry. His hands slid over her shoulders, down her arms, his touch slow, deliberate. She shivered, her body arcing towards him instinctively, her lips parting in a soft gasp. I felt my pulse quicken, my skin tingling, my body reacting to the scene unfolding before me. She turned her head, her eyes locking with his, her lips brushing his jawline. "We're not alone anymore, are we?" she whispered, her voice low, breathless. Her fingers tightened around mine, her grip firm, possessive. I shuddered, my skin burning where she touched me, my body aching for more. He leaned down, his lips grazing her neck, his voice a low growl. "No, we're not." His eyes flicked to me, his gaze piercing, commanding. I felt my heart stop, my body trembling under his scrutiny. He held my gaze, his lips curving into a wicked smile. "And I don't think you want to be alone, do you?" My breath caught, my chest tightening, my mind spinning. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I was trapped between them, their presence enveloping me, drowning me. Her fingers slid up my arm, her touch warm, electric. His eyes held mine, dark, burning, stripping me bare. I was helpless, vulnerable, lost. The train slowed, the spell broke. The woman pulled back, her fingers slipping from mine, her body leaving me cold, empty. She stood, her movements fluid, graceful, her eyes lingering on mine, dark and smoldering. "Maybe next time," she whispered, her voice soft, teasing. She turned, her body pressing against his, her lips grazing his jawline as they walked away together, their silhouettes melting into the shadows. I sat there, breathless, trembling, haunted by their touch, their gaze, their presence. They were gone, but the memory of them, that would stay with me forever. I thought it was over. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. But the night is full of secrets, and the trains, they carry more than just passengers. They carry moments, memories, encounters that change you forever. And just when I thought I had seen everything, she appeared, the woman in the red dress, and she was unlike anyone I had ever met before. Encounter 4, the woman in the red dress. She appeared when I least expected it, like a dream slipping through the cracks of reality. It was another late-night train, the rain tapping gently against the windows, the carriage dimly lit and nearly empty. I thought I was alone, lost in my own thoughts, haunted by the echoes of past encounters. And then, she stepped in. The first thing I noticed was her dress, the striking crimson that clung to her curves, flowing like liquid fire as she moved. Her hair was dark, cascading down her back in soft waves, and her eyes were a shade of green that seemed to glow in the low light, piercing through the shadows and straight into my soul. She didn't hesitate. She walked down the aisle with a confidence that was both intoxicating and intimidating. Every step she took was deliberate, every movement graceful. And then she stopped in front of me. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, her voice smooth as silk, with a hint of something playful, something dangerous. I shook my head, my throat dry, my pulse racing. "No, please." She slid into the seat beside me, her body close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. The scent of her perfume wrapped around me, a blend of jasmine and something darker, something that made my head spin. "You look like someone who's seen ghosts," she whispered, her eyes never leaving mine. I chuckled softly, nervously. "Maybe I have." She smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. "Or maybe you're the ghost." I swallowed hard, captivated by her presence. "Who are you?" She leaned in, her lips just inches from mine, her breath warm against my skin. "Someone you'll never forget." Her fingers brushed mine, light as a feather, sending electric jolts through my veins. I felt my body respond instinctively, leaning into her touch, craving more. Her eyes darkened, her gaze intense, unwavering. And then, without warning, she pulled back, her expression unreadable. But some memories are best left untouched. I stared at her, confused, desperate. "Wait! Don't go." She stood, her dress swirling around her legs, her eyes softening for just a moment. "Some things are never meant to be caught," she whispered. "But they'll haunt you forever." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, leaving me breathless, trembling, and utterly alone. The train ride ended, but her memory lingered, and as the night trains continued their journeys through the darkness, I knew that my most memorable encounters would forever be etched in my soul. Ghosts that would never fade, whispers that would never be silenced, and a longing that would never be satisfied.